Okay. Hopefully everyone knows me, but I'm Kelly Gertis. I work over here at Saragota Public Health, so thanks for signing up to be part of the Better Than Baseline Challenge. I am going to share my screen so that I can show our PowerPoint. And then we'll get going. Okay. If you have chats, I can't see the chats when I'm in presentation mode for you guys, so I'll jump to them at the end, but come off mute if you have something pertinent that we're talking about as we go through, and I'll try to stop and catch it. Otherwise, I'll go to the chat when we're done. So, again, thanks for signing up for the challenge. We're just kicking off week 1, so I've been to quite a few sites across the communities this week, doing InBody scans with all of you, and so we're going to talk about what those results mean. But in the meantime, for the next 10 weeks, we're going to have these lunch and learns on Wednesdays. They'll all be at noon, but they'll all be recorded, like I said, so you don't have to be here in person to count the points for attending. Here's a little rundown of what we're going to be talking about each week. Today, like I said, we'll talk about our InBody results. Next week, we'll jump into nutrition for a couple of weeks because there's lots to talk about around nutrition. In week 4, we'll jump into exercise and particularly strength training and why that's important. Week 5, we'll cover cardiovascular and metabolic health and chronic conditions and how those can be impacted by your body composition. Week 7, we'll talk about stress and how that can impact our health, and also within stress, different hormones that can be issues when it comes to weight loss or other things with health. Week 7, we'll talk about the importance of sleep and recovery and how the body works for maintenance and repair and rejuvenation. In week 8, we'll talk about how to design our environments to be supportive for healthier lifestyles. So that can be in your office, at your home. Week 9, we're going to explore body types. This is kind of a random one, but everyone always finds it interesting. So there's 3 different traditional body types people have, and we'll talk about kind of the characteristics of each of those body types, and then what kind of exercise routines are best for certain body types, what kind of diets and eating habits are best for certain types. And then week 10, we'll just do a huge participant celebration, and we'll let people share what they liked about the challenge, what we didn't, what I'm seeing on the tracking side of things as well. And that's the week I'll also be out to you guys again doing the follow-up InBodies at the end of the challenge. So let's get started with week 1. InBody analysis. So the InBody is that big white scale we brought out, and that is to analyze your body composition. What is your body made up of inside, so that we can tell if we're in good health or not. So I'm going to just give a brief background about what types of InBody mechanisms are out there and why we think it's important to know our body composition. And then we'll jump into understanding the actual sheet that you got in the printout to know how you can assess your own health. So the body's relative amounts of fat and lean body mass is considered body composition. So it's going to look at how much muscle is in the body, how much your bone weighs, how much water you have in your body, and of course it takes in consideration also organ tissues and stuff. The body obviously needs fat. Fat is essential. So body composition will usually break down the amount of muscle you have in the body and the amount of fat. And people always ask, well, how much fat should I have? So here's some generalizations for you. There's 2 types of fat the body needs. There's essential fat, which is required for physiological functioning and lots of cell processes. Our major organs all require fat. Our muscles require fat. Our central nervous system depends on fat, especially in the brain. For men, we need at least 3% fat for these mechanisms and organs to working, and women need 12%. And the reason women need more essential fat is for reproductive means. So we need all of that extra fat for different hormone production and working properly, for raising a human inside of our body and giving it life and all those other things. So we get a little bit of a leeway with essential fat. Our body can also do a great job of storing fat, as many of us probably know. This is not considered essential fat, but it can be helpful if we're someone who goes through a starvation period for a long period of time or can't eat. So certainly in the olden days when we didn't have food readily available, storing fat was super protective to the body and helpful for creating a longer life because you could tap into that energy reserve. For men, we'd like storage fat to be around 12% and for women 15%. So when you add those two percentages, essential and storage fat together, for men, we like to see men with a percent body fat, we'll talk about this, between 15 and 25%, and women between 20, I say around 26% up to 36%. All right. Next, why do we talk about body composition? One, obviously, it helps identify if there's any health issues going on in our body or things we could do to kind of reverse health conditions we might be suffering from. And it also can help identify certain behavior changes we need to make to get to better health. And certainly, like athletes, we have a lot of MMA fighters that actually come into the health department for screenings, but people who are looking for peak performance, wrestlers, those kind of things, they can use this as well to help them strategize their exercise and their workout plans and their diet plans and stuff too. So certainly helps with health, but can also help with performance if you know what your body composition is. Also, it's important to know if you're not having good body composition results, because excess body fat can cause certain, or can be a predictor of certain illnesses like cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and cancer. The fat doesn't necessarily cause these, but it can be a symptom that these things are occurring in the body, or can trigger mechanisms to cause these things to happen. But also on the flip, if you don't have enough fat, like I talked about, we need that essential fat, you can also experience other types of health complications. In men and women, low body fat has been linked to infertility and reproductive issues, circulatory disorders, and immune disorders. And not enough muscle in the body has been linked to slower metabolisms, which then leads to weight gain or other issues, increased risk for bone breaks and fractures, osteoporosis. Sarcopenia is the wasting of muscles, so those things can also occur if we don't have enough muscle mass. There's lots of different ways to measure your body composition. The most popular one is the BMI, body mass index, and you probably all learned about it, but it's just a height and weight formula. It's not very accurate for someone who has extra muscle or excess muscle because it doesn't actually look at the composition. It's just a formula. It was actually created using dead bodies several hundred years, over 100 years ago, to identify what the average recommendation should be for someone's age and height and weight and that kind of stuff. So not the best predictor for most people, but you can easily do it because you just need to know your height and weight. There's a waist to hip ratio scale. There's also skin folds, which were pretty popular a couple of years or couple decades ago, and that's where you take those calipers and pinch your skin so you could see how much fat was there versus muscle. There's underwater weighing, which is the gold standard for identifying what your body composition is. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of tools to take a pool to all of your work sites and do that. Air displacement, bioelectrical impedance is what we use with the InBody. So that sends an electrical current through your body, up through your feet and through your hands on the handles. The way this works is water conducts electricity, right? And water is stored in your muscles and throughout that kind of stuff, but it's not stored in your fats. That's how it can distinguish your fat and muscle composition and where it's at in the body. And then a DEXA scan is another really top of the line way to assess body composition. And I do not have enough money at the health department to purchase one of those. And it's, huge. So it's not traveling anywhere, but some hospitals will have those kinds of scans for more in-depth stuff. I already talked about this a little bit, but BMI is not a good tool because it doesn't measure muscle mass, and we really want muscle mass, so it'd be nice to know what that is in each of us. Bioelectrical impedance, it can have a little bit of an error margin if someone's dehydrated or maybe they have excess water on them. For instance, if you just came out of a pool and didn't dry off and hop on and had extra water on you, you would have it would overly predict your muscle. If you're dehydrated or whatnot, it can underpredict your muscle. DEXA scans, like I said, are super expensive. Underwater weighing, just not practical. And it's amazing to see how many people are actually scared of going underwater. We've had to do this in school before, and a lot of classmates did not like that. And then skin folds obviously are operator error because most of us are not brave enough to pinch everybody's fat, and we underestimate it. So what do your InBody results look like? First off, when you guys got your printout, up at the top is a little ID, And then your number or code or whatever you used on the machine is going to be listed there. So that's how the machine is tracking you. So when we come back in 10 weeks, make sure that you pay attention to what that number is because you're going to want to punch that back in. The first box is going to show how your weight is broken down. So this far right box is total weight. So this person weighs 163 pounds. We'll start in the first box, our first column, with extracellular and intracellular water. This is the amount of water inside and outside your cells. We want more inside our cells than outside our cells. So you can see this person had 70 pounds inside, 39 pounds outside, together 109.6 pounds of body water. Ideally, 50, if not 60% of your weight should be made up of water. And our water is primarily stored in our muscles. And so this is a good amount of lean mass in the body for this person. Then there's dry lean mass. This is going to be your bones and your tissues, that kind of ligaments. And then the rest is going to be pounds of fat. So add those all up and we get today's weight. The next section is your muscle fat analysis. So the first column is going to be your weight. And you'll see this darker column going down the middle of the paper with these little 100s. That's the 100th percentile. So that's the machine's recommendation for you to be ideal for someone your age and your height. So in some metrics, you might want to be better than ideal, right? And some you might be underperforming. But that's kind of the machine's recommendation based on how tall you are and what your age is. If we look at the second row, skeletal muscle mass, this is how many pounds of muscle we have. This is what we want a lot of, right? Because muscle is the engine of our body. So this person has 87.5 pounds, which is above average for the recommendation for that person. So that's awesome. But that can also, we'll talk about this later, make his BMI look a little bit high because he has a lot of muscle. He has 13 pounds of fat, which is on the low end for this particular individual's height and age. And when you do repeat scans, these are two numbers that will be fun to compare in 10 weeks. So you can see, did I actually add any pounds of muscle to my body? Did I lose any pounds of fat compared to my overall weight? So it just doesn't have to be the number on the scale that changes. You can really see what caused that number to change. Hopefully it's not a loss of muscle, it's a loss of fat. All right, the next section is the BMI and percent body fat formula. So remember I said BMI is just a height and weight formula. Ideally, 20 to 25 is where we want individuals. When you get above 25, it's technically labeled overweight. And when you get above 30, it's labeled obese. However, this is not a good predictor for someone who carries a lot of excess muscle. So for this individual, remember, he had a lot of muscle. He's near the overweight category of 25. He's at 24.1, but that's not accurate because he had very low body fat, right? So he's not near being overweight. He's just an extremely muscular individual. Where his percent body fat is at 8.2%. Remember I said we wanted men to be about 12%? So this is a lean individual, likely probably a wrestler or something like that. Most men I'd like to see around 26%, like I said, or lower, and women 36% or lower. So percent body fat, definitely a better indicator for what's going on in your body and health than BMI. All right. Oops, I went too far. Okay, so the next section is your segmental muscle mass analysis. So this is going to look at where the muscle lives in your body. It looks at your upper body, your two limbs, your trunk, and then your lower body, your right and left leg. The top bar going across are pounds. So this person has about 9 pounds of muscle in each arm. And ideally, you'd like to have pretty similar weights in each arm, right? You don't want one arm much stronger than the other. The bottom bar is the percentile of strength. We want these percentages to be 100% or higher, ideally. This means we've got enough strength, we've got enough muscle mass in our body to support the weight of that limb. So even if we're carrying extra fat or whatnot, as long as we're strong enough to support that weight, we can be sure that we're at low risk for having injuries like shoulder problems, knee problems, back problems. We'll have people come in to do scans and sometimes their trunk is really low on the strength scale. And that person, I'll ask, do you have back problems? And they'll say, yeah. And I was like, that's because your core is not strong enough to support that weight, putting a lot of pressure on those back muscles. Similarly, lower body. Women primarily tend to have weaker lower bodies, and that's because as moms or as women, we do a lot with our upper body, cooking, putting things away in cupboards, carrying children. that kind of stuff. And we don't do a lot with our legs unless we're specifically working out or have a fitness plan. Ideally, if I would connect the dots to each of the ends of these bars, I'd like it to form an I. That means there's a balanced build of muscle throughout the body. Like I said, if it makes a bit of a C, that means my core is sort of underdeveloped. I'm at risk for back problems. If it makes a slant, that means either my upper or lower body is underdeveloped. And if you're someone who hasn't started a fitness plan but wants to jump in, this might be an area where you can say, "Ooh, I really need to focus on lower body strength." Ooh, or I could really use some core strengthening exercises.
So if you're at 100, it's acceptable.
Yeah, yep, 100 is great. And
Just
anything
an
above
example,
is...
not saying I am. I'm just
No,
trying to make sure.
yes, you want to be at 100 or more.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good question. All right, the next section is on hydration, how hydrated your body is. ECW-TBW stands for extracellular water to total body water ratio. So if you remember at the very top, it had intra and extracellular water. It's basically the formula for that. So the ideal number here is 0.38. The machine says 0.36 to 0.39, but I always tell people 0.38 is perfect, the 100th percentile. If you're low, just means the body's dehydrated. You could use a lot more muscle. Sometimes, though, it could mean you have a lot of muscle mass and as well. But when it gets to be in the 4s, that's when we're concerned. That's an inflammation marker that the body, some reason is retaining water, fluid retention. It could be because it's escaping out of the cells. There could be an injury where, again, the body's responding and sending that fluid for repair and stuff, but it's just an indicator that something's not quite right. Sometimes it can be a nutrition thing. Sometimes it's a health thing, like I said, like an injury or chronic inflammation, like arthritis or something. But sometimes it can be diet related. And fat creates your cell walls. And if you're not eating enough good fats in your diet, those cell walls can become more permeable and the water is just escaping, right? So we like to have good fats in our diet. And we'll talk about that in one of our nutrition sessions. Okay, and then at the very bottom, if this has been your first scan, it won't show much, but this is where it starts to trend over time. And that's when the InBody machine becomes more valuable because you can see how things have changed over the course of the time. So this person on his first scan weighed 164 pounds, and then on his second scan was down to 163. So he lost about a pound. However, he also gained almost over a half a pound in muscle and lost body percent fat. So that's great, right? We want to see that. Even though he lost weight, we know he didn't lose muscle mass because it actually went up and his percent body fat went down. So we can be assured that most of that muscle weight loss was fat that he lost. And then you can also be confident that it wasn't just water weight fluctuating all the time, right? Because he's been pretty consistent with where his numbers are water-wise. So some of you will just have one column right now filled out, but when we come in 10 weeks, you'll have a second one, and then you can really compare. All right, now if you jump over onto the other side of the right side of your paper, you'll see your InBody score up in the corner. This is just an overall score the machine gives you. It starts with 80 as its sort of like preferred number, and then you lose points or gain points based on your body composition. So for every pound of excess muscle you have, oops, sorry, so it spelled that wrong, you get an extra point on your InBody score because muscle is a good thing to have, right? The more the better. For every pound of excess fat to kilogram of body weight you have, it's going to subtract points. So like I said, 80 is great. If you're in the 70s, it's still fine. Average means balanced body composition. But if you're below 70, it means you could be in the category where we need to focus on gaining more muscle and or losing fat. And it can go above 100. I haven't seen it here locally, but I have been on the internet snooping around and people have gotten over 100. Those are very lean individuals, very high muscle mass. So, we're talking like professional bodybuilders and those kinds of people. But very, very lean people can get very close, if not over 100 points. That is something also we'll come back to. We'll put on our tracking sheet, and I'll show you that in a little bit. All right, below that, I'm not sure if you guys show this or not, but sometimes we'll print out recommendations from the machine on how much fat or muscle it wants you to gain or lose. And that's right here in this mass control section. So the top one would be how much fat it wants you to lose. The bottom one is how much muscle it wants you to gain. A lot of times it overestimates because many of us have excess muscle. And so for us to get to that perfect 100th column, we have to sacrifice some of that extra muscle we have. And so it wants us to lose weight, but that's not necessarily a good thing, right? It's great to have extra muscle. So don't pay a whole lot of attention to this bar. Then it shows where your fat's stored. So this person has 0.2 pounds in each arm, 6 pounds in its trunk, 2 pounds in each leg. This percentage shows you where you are compared to the average. So 100% is the average. So this person's all below average, right? And we already talked about how this person was very lean. If anything is above 100%, that just means you're above average on having excess fat in those limbs. And then the most important thing I think that's really insightful on the InBody is your basal metabolic rate. This is your resting metabolism. So this is how many calories your body needs each day just for you to exist sitting on the couch watching Netflix, not necessarily even working out. So it's the energy your body needs to keep the muscle that you have. Now, many of us work out, right? And we are active. We maybe lift weights or run or whatever. We need to be eating more than that calorie-wise to ensure our body can keep its metabolism working well and keep our body growing and putting on muscle and that kind of stuff. So if you're not eating enough calories, and we'll talk about this again in nutrition, it's really going to slow down any sort of impact you can make on weight loss or muscle gain and stuff. So make sure if you need to track your calories for a couple of days, make sure you're getting to this basal metabolic rate. And if you're active and working out, you should be eating probably a couple hundred calories more than that every day. And we'll jump into that more next week. All right, the next one is visceral fat. It looks a little different on this sheet, but yours is a number, I think. Ideally, this is the internal fat around your organs, so more dangerous than the fluffy stuff you can pinch on the outside of our bodies. This is what causes heart disease, lung disease, all the stress on the organs, right? So we like this below 10. Anything above 20 is then considered high risk for eventually having cardiovascular related issues. And that's just, again, because of all the stress being put on those organs trying to pump and work and stuff like that. There's not much room for them to do their job. Okay, so some takeaways from your InBody are to look at it and think, okay, do I need to put on more muscle? Are there specific areas in my body I should be focusing on? Do I need to start drinking more water? Do I look like I have a healthy metabolism? If some of your basal metabolic rates came back and they're like 1200, that means you don't have much muscle mass maybe, and or your metabolism is kind of wiped out. A lot of us need about 1600 calories at minimum. And so if you're under that, you probably could use more calories in your day or more muscle on your body. And men, obviously, even higher than that, probably. And the big thing here is the takeaway is to don't necessarily judge yourself on what the scale says. Get healthy from within. I'm a good example of this. After I had my kids, I stopped working out a lot. And I used to be very committed to exercise. And then I stopped for 2 years and did nothing. And obviously, I felt horrible. I looked the same. But the InBody showed me I was not healthy, right? My fat was super high. My muscle mass was low, even though the scale had never changed. I recommitted to my workouts and fitness plan and stuff like that about a year and a half ago now. And the InBody has just been so motivating because I can see my weight. My weight actually went up quite a bit, but my muscle mass went up a lot and my percent body fat has dropped a lot. So it's motivating, right? Because if I just use the scale, I'd be super depressed. But by using the InBody and looking at what's inside of me, you can definitely see the health metrics better. Okay, and like I mentioned, we'll come back out in 10 weeks. That'll be the week of June 1st, I think, or thereabouts. And I'll get in touch with all the team captains to schedule times again to come back out. And we'll do the rescans. I have had a lot of people ask, so I'm just going to throw it out there. We do offer these to the public. So if you ever want to come in, or recommend someone to come in, we have an appointment scheduler on our website, cghealth.com. It's $20 for their first scan because we spend a lot of time going through the results like this, but their repeat scans are $10 because they're much quicker and they kind of know what they're looking at. So we do open it up to the public. And we also rent them out to work sites, which many of you know about. All right, we're going to jump to your tracking sheet real fast, and then I'll open it up to questions. But hopefully you all have a tracking sheet. The first tab is going to be your team page. So today, your team captain can check that you guys all all did InBody scans this week, and you'll get some points. But then find your member tab with your name on it, and at the very top, you'll see where your InBody score is. That's where you're going to put that InBody score that printed out on the sheet. And then in 10 weeks, we'll do another one. And then also for week 1, your ways to earn points are 1, to watch or attend the lunch and learn. So you did that. And then also record a personal goal for yourself. I'm not going to dictate what anyone puts. I want you all to just set a goal for the next 10 weeks, what you want it to be. It can be super challenging. It can be super easy. I don't care. You make this how hard or as easy as you want it, but something you think will be attainable, but also kind of push you to, help you make a difference in 10 weeks. So record that in there. And then at the end of the 10 weeks, we'll come back and we'll kind of gauge if we made any progress on that goal. Okay. All right, I think that was my last one. Yes, so any questions? I'm going to stop sharing. I'll look at the chat, but if you have questions, you can come off mute too.
Could you explain skeletal muscle mass really quickly one more time, like where you should be at?
Yep. Let me go back if I can see. There's no magic number, but you'd like, because it's all based on your frame, like how tall you are, right?
Sure.
Let me see. Oops, I went too far. Muscle mass. Okay, so this individual person had 87 pounds. So ideally,
oh, you're not screen sharing anymore.
We can't see it.
Oh, you're right.
Sorry.
Nope. Thank you for saying that. Okay, can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So right here is your skeletal muscle mass, and it's not going to give, everyone's pounds of skeletal muscle is going to be different based on their age and their height. This person has 87 pounds, which is well over the 100th percentile. I'm sure if I did I pulled my calculator, I could tell you what their ideal muscle mass is, but it's probably around 65, 70 pounds of muscle. So they have more. Percent body fat is then relative to that. So how much, if I took my muscle and divided it by my weight, that's my lean mass. But then if I took my fat, 13.4 pounds, and divided it by my total weight, that's my percent body fat. So that's good because then that tells me if most of my body is made up of muscle or if too much is made up of fat. So there's not an ideal skeletal muscle number for people. It's going to be different for every person.
Sure. So that range that you're given is just what you actually are for,
Yep.
that percentage of your body.
Yep. So
Gotcha.
let me see if I'll see if my calculator will. I'm not very good at math, so I gotta. Yeah, I'll have to figure it out. But anyways, yeah, basically, if you're over the 100th percentile in skeletal muscle, that means you have excess muscle. So this person's about the 125th percentile. So he has 25% more muscle than necessary. So what is that? 87. He's got about 21 extra pounds of muscle than the machine says he would necessarily need. So his ideal skeletal muscle would be 66 pounds.
Gotcha. So, thank you for explaining
yep.
that.
Yep. All right. Anyone else have questions? We'll get out of that. If not, we're coming right up on 30 minutes, and I don't want to take more of your time than that. The next one we'll jump into nutrition and like macronutrients, talking about the importance of protein and why fat is helpful and what we should think about carbs. So hopefully it's informative as well. And if you have questions, email me. I'll try to send out Monday emails going here on out. I meant to do it this week, but then I was at all the work sites and I just never got around to getting to the office to do it. So I apologize. But hopefully all the Mondays moving forward, I'll send out a little primer for what you can expect for the week to get the next challenges underway. So
hey, Kelly,
thank you guys.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So sorry. Where do you find, I took a picture of it on my computer. Where do I find the basal metabolic rate on this piece of paper?
Okay, it should be on the right side,
okay,
the right column. And if you go down right maybe before or after visceral fat, I'm trying to think on your guys' sheet. I don't have one in front of me.
It's the score, your InBody score, Kathleen.
Yes.
So it'd be below that in a couple sections, kind of hiding. basal metabolic
Oh,
rate.
wow. I'm way over what I should be eating. Okay. There we have it. Okay.
There you go. Okay. So
Good to
it can
know.
be
Thank you.
it can be low for people because their metabolism isn't working very well. It can be high because you got a lot of muscle. So yeah, everyone's going to be different on there too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, good questions. Thank you guys. Thanks for helping her
Thanks,
out.
Kelly.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
Thank you.